Some showers coming in overnight. Otherwise, though, it's mostly dry nights. I think we'll see the cloud melting away quite rapidly, so generally clear skies as we head towards the start of Tuesday. Temperatures will drop with those clear skies and light winds down into single figures. So a reasonably fresh start to Tuesday, but generally a fine, bright and sunny day. Certainly probably more sunshine than today over the heart of England and northern England. Still maybe one or two showers, northern England, southern Scotland. And certainly the Highlands and the Western Isles will continue to see some rain at times. But most of Northern Ireland, dry, fine and sunny, and warming up across England and Wales. Temperatures more widely over 20 Celsius. In the southeast, 23, 24 is possible. Cooler with that wetter weather in the northwest, which will continue into Tuesday evening. And always the likelihood of some rain at times across the northwest. More weather fronts pushing in here as we head towards Wednesday, but the high pressure will continue to dominate further south, and as it shifts further east, hotter air will waft up from the south, and by Friday across the southeast we could be over 30 Celsius.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the day's big issues and we look at them in depth. Nothing is off the table and I'm not going to cancel anybody for saying what they think. Keeping me company today is London Assembly member and former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and here is what we're discussing on the show. The High Court's bid to halt the government's Rwanda migrant plan as the Prime Minister says it's necessary to stop people risking their lives in the Channel. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson says planned changes to the Northern Ireland trade deal are trivial and it would be preposterous for the EU to start a trade war. We'll get reaction. Plus, Prince Andrew's been reportedly banned from appearing at the ancient Garter Day ceremony this afternoon after Prince Charles and Prince William stepped in. Our royal reporter has the goss. That's what we're talking about for the next hour. What do you need to talk about? Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. First, though, it's the GB News headlines with Rosie.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 1 minute past 2. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. The mother of a boy who's been at the centre of a life support legal dispute says the family will appeal a High Court ruling that the 12-year-old is dead. Archie Battersby suffered brain damage in an incident at home in April. Well, doctors at the Royal London Hospital say his life support care should end. Archie's mother says treatment should continue as her son's heart is still beating.
I'm devastated and extremely disappointed by the judge's ruling. After weeks of fighting a legal battle, when I wanted to be by my little boy's bedside, basing the judgment on an MRI test, which is the first time ever, and that he's likely to be dead, is not good enough.
The government will unveil changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol this afternoon, including relaxed checks on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK and giving ministers permission to override elements of the current agreement. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the changes are necessary to fix the political deadlock in the region.
What it does is it creates unnecessary barriers on trade east-west. What we can do is fix that. It's not a big deal. We can fix it in such a way as to remove those bureaucratic barriers, but without putting up barriers on trade moving north-south in the island of Ireland as well.
A number of Conservative MPs have said they're unhappy with the plans, and the Labour Party are warning the measures will break international law. Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the issues can be resolved through negotiation.
They won't be resolved by legislation that breaches international law and that, frankly, will impede the negotiations that, in the end, will be needed to settle this. So the government is going down the wrong track here.
Government plans to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda are facing two separate legal challenges today. The court's already heard today that 20 people have had their Rwanda tickets cancelled. 11 individuals are still expected to be on that first flight tomorrow. A High Court judge ruled last week the flight could go ahead, but that decision's being appealed. Lee Anderson, MP for Ashfield, says there has to be an end to people crossing the channel.
If it fails, then we've got a big problem. It says to the rest of the world our borders are open, and the evil gangs, the human traffickers will continue to take money off people to send them across the channel. Meanwhile, genuine asylum seekers from places like Ukraine will suffer because of that. We welcome refugees from all over the world, people that are in genuine need. But quite frankly, let me be honest again, make the point to your viewers that the vast majority of the people coming up the channel are not genuine asylum seekers.
The Competition and Markets Authority has confirmed it will carry out a review of the fuel market after average prices hit record highs. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, tweeted that the watchdog will look into why fuel prices are quick to rise but slower to come down. It follows record prices at the pump, with the average price of petrol hitting 185 pence per litre. That's a rise of more than 7 pence in a week. The Labour leader is being investigated by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards over potential breaches of rules on earnings and gifts. The investigation centres on a number of late declarations, including multiple failures to register gifts from football teams, payment for legal advice and an advance on a book he's writing. Sir Keir has insisted he's not broken the MP's code of conduct. His spokesperson has apologised to the watchdog, saying administrative errors in his office resulted in the late declarations. The Prime Minister has launched the UK's new post-Brexit food strategy, which he says will back British farmers and create more jobs. The measures aim to strengthen supply chains and increase domestic food production. But a leaked draft version of the plan has been heavily criticised. The co-founder of the restaurant chain Leon, Henry Dimbleby, led a major review of the country's food industry. He says it ignores salt and sugar tax and government action on obesity. A man who was left paralysed from the waist down after being seriously injured in the Manchester Arena bombing has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in a wheelchair. He's raised almost £500,000 for the Spinal Injuries Association. It's 45-year-old Martin Hibbert who made the climb alongside the nurse physio who helped him recover from the bombing in 2017. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Alex for We Need to Talk About.
Funny, isn't it? Thousands of people are stranded abroad trying to get home after their flights have been cancelled, while a scheduled flight to take migrants to Rwanda will likely have barely anybody on it. The plane, which is still due to take off tomorrow after the Home Office won the case that was brought against it last week, now has fresh challenges because the policy is being taken to court again and would-be deportees are seeking 11th-hour reprieves. So, if anyone does make it to Kigali, it would have cost the taxpayers such massive legal fees it would have been cheaper to give them a private jet home. Meanwhile, poor old Rwanda is being spoken about like it's the seventh circle of hell. It's one of the fastest growing countries in Africa with an ambition to make its capital a model city. Google it. Rwanda has banned plastic. It has the highest number of women in parliament in the world. It has a car-free day every month and gets the entire nation together for Umuganda on the last Saturday for community projects. Sounds like a left-wing utopia. Rwanda wants to give migrants, the ones risking their lives to cross the channel, a job and a new life to help them build their country, which also happens to be a breathtaking land of 1,000 hills. It's funny, isn't it, that all the people protesting the policy are so often quick to shout about racism, but they do come across a little bit racist themselves as they sneer about a progressive African nation. Well, speaking earlier today, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, robustly defended the Rwanda migrants' policy.
I've been very clear that throughout, I think if you go back to the speech I gave about what we were trying to do right at the beginning when we announced the policy, I always said that it would begin with a lot of teething problems and you would have a lot of legal action against it. But and they would try and delay it, and that's inevitable. But what we're trying to do is stop the business model of criminal gangs who are preying on people, moving them across the channel in unseaworthy vessels, risking their lives and sometimes costing their lives.
Well, our reporter Ellie Costello has been in court and sent this update.
Well, you can probably see and hear a very passionate protest taking place outside the Royal Courts of Justice right now. There's around 30 to 40 people with banners saying hashtag stop the flight. And we've actually been hearing chants of no, no, stop Rwanda. There is quite a heavy police presence here as well. And there has been tension between two different groups of people here. One over this side of the road saying that this was the right way to deal with refugees and migrants. Obviously, the other side very passionately saying that this is against the migrants' human rights. So quite tense scenes here at the High Court. And this is happening because there is a double legal challenge taking place today against a judge's decision on Friday not to stop tomorrow's first flight from the UK to Rwanda. So this morning was the appeal to that decision that was made on Friday, and this afternoon we're going to hear a new case brought by Asylum Aid. That is a charity that supports those seeking asylum. That is listed for this afternoon, so it's not clear yet whether this afternoon's case will be similar to the one that we heard on Friday, but we will find out in a few hours. But court began this morning. We heard that 11 people are now scheduled to be on tomorrow's flight to Rwanda. That is down from 31, which was the figure on Friday. The judge even referenced the Times newspaper today, which suggests that it could now actually be in single figures, the people aboard that flight, but there's no clarification on that. But this was a last-ditch attempt by lawyers to get this flight grounded tomorrow, and their arguments were the same as Friday. They said that the Rwanda plan is unfair, it's unsafe, and it's unlawful. And Reza Hussein, who was the lawyer representing two people at risk of removal, as well as three organisations, he challenged the policy, and he mentioned the fact that he wanted the full judicial review. He wanted that to be waited for before any decision was made on flights. He actually raised the idea of money, and he said, imagine sending people on a flight tomorrow, and then the full judicial review about the Rwanda policy happens next month, and you have to bring all those people back. They would then be entitled to damages, and that is a huge waste of taxpayers' money. So he was urging the judge to wait that 6 weeks or so until that full judicial review. What was really interesting in court this morning was that the UN Refugee Agency, their lawyer was in court today, and very seriously she put their position to the court. She said that the flight tomorrow should not be taking place, and more generally the UK-Rwanda agreement should be suspended, making that very clear. Finally, we heard from lawyers for the Home Office. Their argument was really quite simple, that the judge on Friday had made the right decision and that flight should take off tomorrow. Well, the judgment should come in from that appeal at about 3:30 p.m. this afternoon. That second hearing that I mentioned is going to start at 2 p.m. and we'll hear a judgment from that hopefully later on this evening. And the outcome of both of those hearings will determine if that flight actually takes off tomorrow.
Well, let's talk now to my studio guest, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and former chair of the London Assembly's Police and Crime Committee. Sean, always lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, this policy has caused nothing but controversy since it was announced, and it was predictable, wasn't it? It was going to face these hurdles. Boris Johnson himself saying there were always going to be teething problems and delays. But does that not suggest that it was a policy doomed to fail, and we're wasting a lot of money on this?
Actually, I don't think it's a policy that's doomed to fail, and I think the money and the Prime Minister pushing it through is probably the right thing to do. We are a democratic country, people can appeal, and that's happening, and they would have known this when they've planned it, and you have to go through that process. But I think there's 2 or 3 things that I'd say that really need to have a look at. Firstly, language. We need to separate people who seek asylum from economic migrants. Much of the people who are trying to block this keep pushing the word asylum, asylum, asylum. I spoke to someone in the street the other day and she said, well, if people are seeking asylum, why didn't they stop in the first country? So there's that big conversation there. And also, the other part is, what else? I saw Keir Starmer say it should stop, Fine, Keir, what's your plan? Because if you're actually going to fully open the borders of this country to the entire world, fine, but tell us. Tell the public so the public can have their view on it. Because the problem is, everybody's talking about stopping it, and I can see both sides of the argument, but you've got to have an alternative. And the last piece I'd say as well, we're not the only country who's done this. Denmark and Australia and other countries around the world have also done similar policies.
Yeah, I mean, the UNHCR, funded by the EU, actually used Rwanda to house 1,500 migrants, in fact, in 2019. But, I mean, the thing is here, I've heard reports of some of these migrants being told only a week ago that they're due to be shipped off to Rwanda. And then people would make the counter-argument, wouldn't they, that if these people weren't desperate, why are they you're risking their lives, putting their lives at risk by getting on boats? I mean, it does seem to some people perhaps a little bit unkind, to say the least, to then uproot these people from wherever they're from and send them all the way out to Rwanda. Do we know who these people are? I mean, has anyone given any report of the 35 who are supposed to be on the aeroplane? It's now likely to be only 11, of what their origins are. Are these people who've come from the Horn of Africa in the first place? Are these people from Albania?
It goes broader than that. These 35 people, of course, for them, their case is very important. But for the country, for the Prime Minister, for the government, it's about thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people. And where are these people come from? What are the trends? You heard the Prime Minister talk about disrupting the business model, which I think is very important. And that's where asylum versus economic migrants is important, because you have people who are in countries all over the world taking poor people's money and putting them on this very deadly journey. Somehow we have to send the message back that if you're going to come to this country or any other country, there's a legal way to do that, pursue that. Don't spend your money with these criminals. And if we really want to help people in asylum, yes, we need to see where people are coming from, who they are, but we also need to make sure that we support them. But we can't support them if they're just put in this big pot of people moving around the world. We need to understand who really needs the help, and then we can help. And not just us, the rest of the world. Because the other piece I'd say as well, when we take in everybody around from the world, which I do believe we should take people in, the question that has to also be answered is, why are we not asking those countries where people are immigrating from to change? We can't just let all the dictators in the world continue to dictate because we pick up their problems. We should force them to change, to make their countries a place that people want to stay.
Do you think there's been a bit of a lack of government communication, first of all, on who these people are, who they want to deport? No one seems to know, which is where this confusion potentially comes from. But also, as I said in my introduction, Rwanda keeps being spoken of as if it's some sort of hellhole. I've lived in East Africa, and I think places like Kigali up-and-coming cities. Vibrant, free, democratic, actually very progressive.
And that's a real thing. So I'm in a number of WhatsApp groups in the black community, and there's outrage about how Rwanda's been spoken about. And someone said to me, I wonder if they were sending them, Switzerland is the country they named, if they're sending them to Switzerland, a white country, would it be spoken about in this way? And I think Rwanda really is moving forward. It's a progressive country. And of course, the whole continent of Africa is trying to progress. So I think people should be very careful how they speak about Rwanda. I think it's bordering on offensive. And the other piece is as well, if we are going to help these individuals, we do need to do the bigger piece of work about where they're coming from. Because in this small case, the 35 on the plane, data protection says that we couldn't just put their details out in the press. But we need to do the bigger piece of work about migration across the globe. How do we support that? How do we stop that? How do we make it not necessary?
Sean, thank you ever so much. I want to know your views on this. Interesting that a lot of the arguments that have come up have been those of modern slavery, which makes me wonder how many of these migrants might have actually originated from countries such as Albania. I don't know. Would you like to know? Let me know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet the programme @GBNews. You're with GB News on TV and radio. Coming up, we'll be heading to Northern Ireland as legislation to crack parts of the protocol are being published today. Are we on the verge of a trade war with the EU? Time for a short break now and a check on the weather forecast.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather from the Met Office. Things hotting up this week. Pleasant enough out there today in the sunny spells, light winds. It's not dry and fine everywhere. There are a few showers across the northwest. These weather fronts trying to push in, but this area of high pressure is dominating and will really establish itself, certainly across the southern half of the country throughout this week. Weak weather fronts still bringing some cloud, though, and patchy rain over the Highlands and pushing into the Northern Isles. Maybe one or two showers across southwest Scotland and one or two for Northern Ireland. But certainly much of eastern Scotland dry, most of England and Wales dry and fine. Yes, quite a bit of cloud developing this afternoon, but most places still seeing some good spells of sunshine. And temperatures around, or maybe a touch above average, into the low 20s across the southeast, high teens for much of northern Britain. And across the north, particularly north of Scotland, we'll continue to see some showers coming in overnight. Otherwise, though, it's mostly dry night. I think we'll see the cloud melting away quite rapidly, so generally clear skies as we head towards the start of Tuesday. Temperatures will drop with those clear skies and light winds down into single figures. So a reasonably fresh start to Tuesday, but generally a fine, bright and sunny day. Certainly probably more sunshine than today over the heart of England and northern England. Still maybe one or two showers, northern England, southern Scotland, and certainly the Highlands and the Western Isles will continue to see some rain at times. But most of Northern Ireland, dry, fine and sunny, and warming up across England and Wales. Temperatures more widely over 20 Celsius. In the southeast, 23, 24 is possible. Cooler with that wetter weather in the northwest, which will continue into Tuesday evening. And always the likelihood of some rain at times across the northwest. More weather fronts pushing in here as we head towards Wednesday. But the high pressure will continue to dominate further south. And as it shifts further east, hotter air will waft up from the south. And by Friday, across the southeast, we could be over 30 Celsius.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, the government have finally decided to introduce law to bin bits of the Northern Ireland Protocol that harm the country and, frankly, make zero sense, like forcing checks on goods that are going from one side of the UK to the other side of the UK. But the likelihood of the bill sailing through Parliament is as probable as a plane of migrants taking off for Rwanda. Perhaps the move is designed to shake the EU into getting back round the negotiating table. But history tells us, with useful idiots inside the Palace of Westminster, Brussels never makes life easy for Brexit Britain. With Northern Ireland caught in the cost of living crisis and now unable to even form a government, the UK surely must act. But while Boris says the EU launching a full-on trade war in response would be preposterous for trivial tweaks to the arrangement, his opponents warn about breaking international law. As the UK economy appears to be tanking the most in the developed world, is it really time to pick a fight with Brussels? Well, despite fears over trade, UK exports are the highest since 2020, while what we buy from the EU is also massively on the up. So try telling a French farmer during the cost of living crisis we'll no longer buy their cheese because we can't ship Percy pigs to Portadown. Now, earlier, the Prime Minister said the Northern Ireland Protocol in its current form was creating unnecessary barriers.
We've got a problem at the moment, which is that in Northern Ireland, the Stormont Assembly, the government of Northern Ireland, can't meet because of the effects of the protocol. What it does is it creates unnecessary barriers on trade east-west. What we can do is fix that. It's not a big deal. We can fix it in such a way as to remove those bureaucratic barriers, but without putting up barriers on trade moving north-south in the island of Ireland as well. That's what we want to do. And so in terms of the strategy, the overarching objective, the primary thing we got to do.
Let's get the latest from GB News Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie, who's in Belfast. Doogie.
Well, welcome to Belfast. It is a very overcast day, and it's also overcast with the politics that are going on here. This is all about choices. You can either have the protocol or the Good Friday Agreement. You can have less choice of food on your shelves and the cost of living go up, and you can choose to change your nationality without actually having a referendum over it. That's what the protocol is doing in Northern Ireland. It has brought down the government here. Back in February, the DUP withdrew their First Minister, and they are refusing to go back into government until certain issues inside the protocol are fixed. Now, we hear all sorts of things around trade wars. I spent last week in Dublin, and I can tell you they get £65 billion a year of trade back and forth to the UK. Do they want to start a trade war when their gross domestic product is just over £350 billion? That would be totally self-crucifying for them. It would be economic suicide for them to do that. They have said they don't want a trade war, but they've also said that Europe will listen to what they want. They will follow their lead. There could be a number of reasons for that. Firstly, because if it had to go back to be ratified inside Europe, you would have to have every single European voting with Europe, not one veto. You often wonder, would those former Eastern blocs do that? Would Poland vote to sanction Britain in this current climate? Would Estonia? Would Latvia? I pretty much think not. So the way forward now is going to be negotiation. And we've really got to think, is this regulation and legislation that's been put at the doors of Westminster there as a negotiating tool, or is it there for real?
Doogie, thank you ever so much. Well, joining me now is businessman and former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Ben, every time this raises its head, it's the same old tropes, isn't it? It breaks international law. They made this deal themselves. It breaks the Good Friday Agreement. I mean, why can't the government seem to get people to understand what they're saying, that actually this is not just necessary, but it's common sense?
It's not just common sense. I mean, it's absolutely a prerequisite for a country to have control of its borders. And at the moment, we have this ridiculous situation where we have a border down the middle of the United Kingdom between a part of the United Kingdom and the rest of ourselves, Great Britain. And it just does not make any sense whatsoever. In fact, I would go so far as to say that under the Vienna Convention, it is the EU that has broken international law because it has knowingly foisted on the United Kingdom a treaty which breaches our own internal constitutional arrangements. That under international law is illegal. If the EU knew, as it should have done, that by doing so it would have undermined the Act of Union, which it has done, 2 courts have now said it has done that, and that it was breaking the Belfast Agreement, it is the EU that is breaking international law. And actually the Prime Minister has the tools simply to tear up the protocol. He should just do it.
I mean, it seems to me that if the idea is to get the EU back around the negotiating table, and a lot of people from the Conservative Party pedalled out today to fight the line of the government have been saying just that. We're ready to negotiate and we think the EU are too. Well, they don't seem to be, do they? Mariusz Sefcovic tweeting his consternation, America likely to stick its oar in. Can there ever be a solution?
Well, the EU is definitely not at the negotiating table, not at the moment anyway. Mariusz Sefcovic's terms of reference don't allow him to negotiate a variation to the protocol. He's boxed in by his own mandate, if you like. So the EU is not at the table. And one of the problems I think the Prime Minister has now got is that he's cried wolf far too many times. Throughout 2021, he said, and indeed earlier this year, he said he wouldn't hesitate to invoke Article 16 if the EU didn't start playing ball. Well, we're still waiting for an invocation of Article 16, which, just to remind your viewers, is a safeguarding mechanism in the protocol, entirely consistent with the terms of the protocol, for the United Kingdom to protect itself in the event that the protocol is doing damage. And the government hasn't invoked it. And now we have new legislation coming to Parliament, actually at a time when the Prime Minister is quite weak. 148 Conservative Party MPs voted against him in the vote of no confidence, and they could easily defeat this new legislation. So I don't really understand where the Prime Minister is going with it. Perhaps he wants a bust up in Parliament. Perhaps he's heading towards an election.
Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, thank you ever so much. Sean, perhaps the Prime Minister wants a bust-up in Parliament, Ben says. I mean, that does seem to be a bit of a thread, doesn't it? He brings out policies and does things that cause a lot of consternation. It gets the headlines and gets the public on his side, but it doesn't get the job done. Is this possibly the problem, that if Boris wasn't Boris, actually the EU might want to sit around the negotiating table?
I'd say no. This is one of the few things I don't think has anything to do with it being Boris. The EU, we left, and there's many in Europe who simply will not accept that. So they're either trying to bring us in or cause trouble. And our government has had to respond. You've heard there from your last guest how actually the EU had already broken international law. So I think that's a bit of a red herring that's been set running by the Prime Minister's opposition, by the people who don't want him to make this change. But let's be very clear. If you're the Prime Minister, your first thing would be, actually, I might be able to get Stormont back up and running with this. Because I could be saying to people, we're going to give these rules and we can only ratify these rules if Stormont is up and running. So be a way of pushing the DUP into actually helping run Northern Ireland. The other piece, of course, is nobody knows actually what's in these rules. Now, if you listen to the Prime Minister, he says they're actually quite low level, quite simple, quite small, quite practical. And the EU's response so far, if you wade through all the nonsense, has been actually, we are prepared to come to the negotiating table after we read this. So I think the government are trying to do two things here. and trying to make that practical change to move people forward, which actually could make a big change on the ground, getting the DUP back into Parliament to actually run Northern Ireland. And secondly, firing the starting gun on negotiations with the EU, because somebody has to push in the negotiations. It's always been us as a country, because the EU didn't want any change, so we've always had to fight for that change.
Sean, thank you. Thank you so much. Beggars belief, doesn't it? You know, the EU are there causing a fuss over Northern Ireland buying stuff from another part of the UK. And after the 2014 annexation of Crimea, a lot of EU countries continued to buy things from Putin despite sanctions. Hypocrites. You're with GB News on TV and DAB radio. Coming up, the devastated family of Archie Battersby. They respond to the decision by a High Court judge that his life support machine should be turned off. Now, though, it's time for a check on the news headlines.
It's 2:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The mother of a boy who's been at the centre of a life support dispute says the family will appeal a High Court ruling that the young boy is dead. 12-year-old Archie Battersby suffered brain damage in an incident at home in April. Doctors at Royal London Hospital say his life support treatment should end and his ventilator should be disconnected. His mother, Holly Dance, says his heart's still beating and she wants treatment to continue. Government plans to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda is facing two separate legal challenges in the courts today. The court's already heard 20 people have had their Rwanda tickets cancelled. 11 individuals, though, are still expected to be on that first flight tomorrow. Both appeals are going through the court today. The government's going to unveil changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol later this afternoon. It will include the ability for ministers to unilaterally override the current agreement. The new legislation will include relaxing checks on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. But Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said the measures marked a low point in the UK's approach to Brexit. The Labour leader is being investigated by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards over potential breaches of rules on earnings and gifts. The investigation centres on a number of late declarations. The payments relate to legal advice he provided, the year he became the opposition leader, and an advance on a book he's writing. Sir Keir insisted he's not broken the MP's code of conduct. The UK economy fell by 0.3% in April, according to official figures. UK gross domestic product is now nearly 1% above its pre-pandemic level. The Chancellor says he's fully focused on growing the economy. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Shortly, we'll be back with Alex and We Need to Talk About.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
After a heart-wrenching legal battle to keep their child on life support, the parents of Archie Battersby have been told their little boy is deemed clinically dead. 12-year-old Archie was found unconscious at his home on the 7th of April. Having been rushed to hospital, he was soon in a coma on life support while further medical investigations took place. Doctors determined there was no more they could do and advised ending treatment, but his parents wanted more time and fought to challenge the decision. But the worst possible news has today been delivered in court. Let's speak now to our reporter Alice Porter, who is at the Royal London Hospital. Alice, tell us more about the judge's decision today.
Hi there. Well, the judge had to really make a decision about whether Archie Battersby was alive or dead. Now, his heart continues to beat, but he has been unconscious ever since he came into the Royal London Hospital 2 months ago. So, of course, this case has provoked very profound questions about what it means to be dead and what it means to be alive. Now, the judge has looked at the evidence from the number of doctors who've been treating Archie Battersby here, but also doctors from other hospitals as well, who've all concluded that it is highly likely that he is brain stem dead. Now, Mrs. Justice Arbuthnot said Archie had no pleasure in life and that his brain damage is irrevocable. And she also said that if he was to stay on a ventilator, in all likelihood he would suffer a sudden death, and therefore his family would not have the opportunity to say goodbye in the way that they would want. She also said that his brain damage was irrevocable, and on the balance of probabilities, Archie is dead, and therefore gave permission for hospital staff to stop the ventilator, in quite an extraordinary decision, of course, which has huge ramifications for the family.
Yeah, what was the family's reaction to this?
Well, the family said they were absolutely devastated by the news, and of course made the important point that his heart continues to beat. Holly Dance, who is Archie Battersby's mother, was also saying that he has gripped her hand and that there's been movement from him. She gave a very emotional statement outside the hospital a little earlier today, and this is what she had to say.
I feel sickened at the hospital and the judge have failed to take the wishes of the family into consideration. I do not believe Archie has been given enough time. From the beginning, I have always thought, what is the rush? His heart is still beating, he has gripped my hand, and as his mother and my gut instinct, I know my son is still there.
That was Holly Dance speaking there, and I think quite an important point that she meant there is this issue of time. The family have never said that they want to keep him on a ventilator indefinitely, and it's incredible to think it's only been actually 2 months since the accident took place, since Archie Battersby was found unconscious, and that they wanted more time to see if he would make a recovery. And of course they said they were absolutely devastated by the news. It was also, I think, important that the family, sort of Christian views, is very much that life ends when a heart stops beating, therefore for his heart to keep beating and for that aspect to sort of continue, it made this decision even worse. And also I think what's important to stress is this decision was made online, it wasn't heard in court, and Holly Dance and Archie Battersby's family said that this was very insensitive and will of course be appealing the decision made by the High Court judge today.
Alice Porter, thank you ever so much. Well, Sean Bailey is still with me. Sean, any parent would do what Archie's parents have been doing, surely, and fight any chance of hope, any dream that he could be saved. I mean, I spoke to the mother last week, and it's just heartbreaking.
There's no doubt that his parents are pursuing the course of action that any parent, anybody who's watching this now who's a parent, a brother, a sister, an auntie, or friend, you'd want to leave no stone unturned to see Archie return if it's at all possible. But the other flip side of this, of course, if you're the judge, you're very likely to listen to the professionals involved, the doctors. And the doctors are thinking, well, could we use the resources to keep several other children alive who could maybe, we are far more certain would return to full health or at least have an active life. And that's that tension, isn't it? And as medical science gets better, as parents pursue the normal things that parents pursue, I think this question will come up more and more, because the really moral question here is, how long is too long? How long is long enough? Now, for me as a parent, 2 months doesn't seem that long at all. but for the hospital, they clearly see it differently, and the judges stood in the middle having to make a decision. But I don't think this is a situation that can be resolved in a way that will make the parents feel right, because I, like them, would want to wait and wait and wait and wait. And it also comes down to a question of money. If you could fund it yourself, you could wait forever, but we're all joined to the NHS, and the NHS has a limit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge and heartbreaking burden for everybody involved to carry.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, doesn't it seem there's some kind of royal fandango every day at the moment? Well, today was Garter Day, an ancient tradition where the highest order of the monarch's most loyal servants takes place, appointing new knights to the order, to which Sir John Major and former Labour PM Tony Blair will join today. Oh, the poor Queen. And it involves feathered hats, luxurious robes and a glut of the royal family, as well as all the legacy, pomp and circumstance one could wish for in an otherwise little-known ceremony. The Queen herself did not attend, something we're having to get used to. But the big point of interest was the absence of Prince Andrew, who allegedly begged for his inclusion, only to be reportedly blocked last minute by Charles and William. Is there any way back for the disgraced second son and one-time rumoured favourite of the Queen? Well, let's cross live to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who is in Windsor. Cameron, tell us more.
Hi, Alex. Yes, well, very shortly, the members of the royal family and the members of the most noble order of the Garter will process from the staterooms at the top of Windsor Castle down here to where I am at St George's Chapel for a service. Now, Buckingham Palace confirmed this morning that both the Queen and Prince Andrew would not be attending any of the public elements of today's event, but they will, in fact, or they already have, attended the private ceremony in the Garter throne room at Windsor Castle, as well as a lunch. But they're not processing in public. We know that Her Majesty has mobility issues. And let me tell you about Prince Andrew. Now, it's understood, if you believe reports in The Sun this morning, that Prince Charles and Prince William lobbied the Queen hard to make sure that Prince Andrew was not included of any of the public elements of the service. This is because they feared there would be a huge public backlash following Prince Andrew's out-of-court settlement in a civil sexual assault case against him, which he denies. We know that, according to The Sun, Prince Andrew is very much wanting to use his HRH title again. He wants to be Colonel of the Grenadier Guards again, and he wants to have his patronages back. He's a Councillor of State, and he believes that he should get it back. But one source told the newspapers this morning that that is delusional of him if he genuinely believes that. In slightly more happier news, perhaps, Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, is being made a royal lady of the most noble order of the Garter here today at Windsor Castle. And perhaps more controversially, Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, is being made a Knight's Companion. But there has been a huge protest outside of Windsor Castle here this afternoon against that. 1.5 million people have signed a petition calling for Tony Blair's knighthood to be reciprocated. He was, of course, the Prime Minister during the Allied invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan back in 2003. But there's only been one of the predecessors, of Tony Blair's predecessors, former Prime Ministers, who's not been enlisted into this kind of ancient order. So perhaps Her Majesty and the royal household were just following tradition.
Cameron, thank you so much. Tradition a lot these days. I feel like I need a degree in history to keep up with it all. Sean, let's go back to Prince Andrew, because, you know, one thing that strikes me here is this is a man who was brought up with enormous privilege and, I think without doubt, exploited it and used it to live a very jet-setting, wonderful life. And, you know, he's caused a lot of controversy. Of course, no one knows for sure whether he was guilty or not of the things he allegedly did. But it seems a rather unfortunate indictment of his character that he won't just shut up and shuffle off now, you know, and protect his family.
I think for me, actually, I'm more interested in Prince Charles's reaction to get involved. It's been interesting to see Prince Charles gently stepping up into the role of monarch. I think many times he's made a misstep with what he's done publicly, but this, for me, is a really good example of him defending his mother, because the Queen right just now does not need this kind of controversy. She's had a wonderful jubilee, she's coming to the end of her reign, and Prince Charles' intervention here, and his brother as well, I think was a very, very good thing. And I think Prince Andrew, actually, he needs to understand the public may well forgive him, but not so soon. He needs to have a low profile for a longer period of time. And I'd also say this as well. I, myself, am also honorary colonel, and it is the greatest honour you can bestow on someone to become an honorary colonel of a regiment of men who fight for this country. And his particular regiment have a real history of defending and promoting this country. I wonder how they would feel about having him take up that role again so quickly. So I think right just now, the royal household seems, to my mind, to have made the right decision. And I think Prince Andrew needs to find ways that he can come back out into the public arena without all of his titles, because I then think that the public can forgive him more easily.
Yeah, take a page out of his mother's book. Never complain, never explain, and live a life of service. It seems to me he's been living a life for Prince Andrew quite recently. Lots of you have been getting in touch via email about sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. Let's hear what some of you have to say. Tom says, I'm really angry at my tax being paid to greedy lawyers representing illegal immigrants. It shouldn't get that far. John says, we have a cost of living crisis, a housing crisis. What about my human rights to not have to struggle? I want my tax to pay for my family, and I want my kids to be able to have a safe life. Alan says, the problem is people are entering the country illegally, and many of them have gotten rid of their documents, so they cannot be identified. Now, what is it with the British obsession to compare our weather to anything in the world as soon as it ventures beyond a rather boring 10-degree margin? Colder than Siberia, hotter than Florida. Is there someone whose job it is in the Met Office to run their finger down the global temperatures list and find somewhere, anywhere, that could be used in a headline? Well, I can report that this week it's also wetter than the Sahara. And that's after Tropical Storm Alex was supposed to batter the country this weekend. Well, just like her namesake, she was a breath of fresh air instead. It's time for the Alex Agenda. Oh, coming over here, taking our jobs. The caricature rallying cry of the Brexiteer. Well, now they really are. Remember that supposed exodus from the City of London that was going to happen when we left the EU, when a load of bankers decided to go and work in merry old Frankfurt instead? Yeah, that one. Didn't happen. Oh, well, not to be proven wrong, the European Central Bank is trying to force banks here to send staff across the channel to beef up Eurozone operations or face fines. Well, the Bank of England tried to put them back in their place, but it's the Americans who aren't having any of it. Wall Street bosses are giving the EU short shrift over their plot. Quite right, too. When it comes to the world's financial centres, it's got to be New York or London. Not a single EU money metropolis makes the global top 10. Now, finally, a crackdown on the murky and insidious influence of foreign powers in our seats of learning. The university's Minister, Michelle Donnellan, is to set out rules for institutions to report bungs from foreign entities, as loads of them accept cash from Russia and China, while giving them access to some of our most sensitive areas of research. 3 out of 4 directors at one Cambridge research centre had ties with Huawei, whereas 29 so-called Confucius institutes are being closed down due to concerns over spying. It's long been strongly believed hostile powers are using our universities to access the inner core of British influence. But for too long, cash-hungry colleges have left the door wide open. Now, an utterly shocking report by The Times has shown that kids are turning up to primary school not toilet-trained and unable to even speak. Some teachers have reported there's no time to teach when pupils can't say their own names and still drink from baby bottles, even using dummies in classrooms, and are being brought to school in buggies. The report suggests nearly a third of 5-year-olds are not at the right stage of development, leaving teachers to parent, having to help kids hold a pencil and eat with cutlery. Some can't even walk because they've only ever been sat behind a TV. Whatever is behind this horrific decline in child development is heartbreaking. Something is truly broken, and it will not take political correctness to correct it. Sean, kind of gloomy Alex Agenda stories today. Any of those strike you that you want to have a chat about?
100% the last one about children not arriving at school with the correct development. What will be interesting to see, people on the left will blame it on the government, and they'll be saying you need to spend more on this and you need to do more on that. But my response will be we need to expect more of parents. If you look at the history of this country, our parents were significantly poorer, certainly mine were, than we are now. So that the idea that it's about poverty, that this lowering of standards happening simply isn't true.
What is it about? Because, you know, we like to be candid on this show, and it does take taking some taboos to discuss a topic like this. Is it a change in social attitude? Is it this idea that, you know, more and more people think they can have a child and someone will support it, the government will support it, and they're not equipped to do the job of parenting, whereas perhaps in previous generations that wasn't an option?
For me, it's been about expectation. So if my mum never looked after me, if I couldn't hold custody by the time I got to school, my mum would have been in trouble. Social services wouldn't have gone to my mum and treated her like a victim, they'd have treated her like the villain of the piece. That's the difference now. We are so focused on everything of the individual and making sure people feel no pressure, no shame, that they then act accordingly. If you have a large group of people who are constantly told they are victims, this is the result. One of the most important things about working with people who are in a tough situation is making them know they have agency. I come from a very poor background. I worked with people in equally poor background, and our saviour was the fact that we were encouraged to do for ourselves. Yes, the government needs to give opportunities, but ultimately, if you dangle an opportunity and I don't have the will to pursue it, it will not happen. So there's a balance here between what people should be doing for themselves and what the government should be providing, and we have absolutely swapped over to we will put nobody under pressure. But the people who lose are young people. If you are a baby, the only chance you have in life is your parents. The state is a very poor parent, always has been, always will be. We need a state that supports parents, but also challenges them to do better.
Yeah, I'm surprised that story wasn't bigger. You know, I was horrified when I read it. Teachers having to change nappies of 5-year-olds. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
I've been a governor of a number of schools over the years. I'm currently a governor now. And one of the most distressing conversations I've had with a teacher is when a teacher said to me she's retiring from teaching, which is a surprise because she's 38. You know, long way till she retires. I said, why? She said, I never became a teacher to change nappies. She said, I'm utterly offended that this morning I had to change a nappy. And I said, it's the first time. She said, no, but it will be the last time. And that's the nature. Now, of course, we always report on the extremes, and it always has been extremes, but the problem is that extreme is becoming too common. Teaching is a very tough job. I'll tell anybody that all day long it is a tough job. You don't need these things to make it horrible as well.
Yeah, Sean, you've been fantastic on the programme today. Thank you for your candour and your analysis on all of the stories we've discussed. We'll have you back again,
pleasure.
No doubt. Well, that is all I've got time for today. Thank you to you as well for sending in your opinions on some of the big stories. You can, of course, do the same again tomorrow. I will be back for We Need to Talk About on GB News at the same time. 2 o'clock tomorrow. You know that by now. Coming up next, it's The Briefing with Tom Harwood. First, though, it's time for the weather forecast. Let's hope it stays nice. Bye-bye.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin. Hot and sunny weather for many of us through the rest of this week, with temperatures steadily ticking up, probably peaking on Friday. It's not going to be hot and sunny everywhere, however. Like today, there'll be some showery rain at times across northern and western parts of Scotland. A few showers in southern Scotland during this evening, tending to fade away. For many, it's going to be dry. The cloud will tend to melt away as well. So we'll have clear skies and actually quite a cool night across England and Wales. Temperatures down into single figures. But temperatures, as I say, will be building both by day and by night as we go through the rest of this week. The details for Tuesday, well, dry and sunny for many, but there will be a lot of cloud across northern Scotland, some rain at times, particularly for the Highlands, the Western Isles and Shetland. Maybe the odd shower for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland, but for most places it's fine. It's warming up, temperatures into the high teens or low 20s, maybe into the mid-20s across the southeast. Cooler though with the breeze and the outbreaks of rain across the northwest, which will persist through Tuesday evening. And in fact, beyond on and off here, the rain through the rest of this week. Elsewhere, again, clear skies leading into a sunny day once more on Wednesday. And again, temperatures will be ticking up further. Still some showery rain, perhaps over northeast Scotland, more particularly across the west coast. Maybe a little bit pushing into Northern Ireland later on Wednesday, but for the majority across southern, eastern Scotland, England and Wales, it is a day of sunny spells and building heat. Temperatures by Wednesday more widely into the low to mid-20s, maybe peaking in the London area, 28 degrees. Again, it will be cooler in the northwest. Temperatures are set to rise further as high pressure moves in and then just ambles its way to the east, allowing a plume of even hotter air to push northwards. Temperatures are likely to peak on Friday, over 30 Celsius across the southeast, probably turning cooler through the weekend.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel. They're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk